am Rajesh from the Department of Zoology, working as Assistant Professor. Today we are going to see about ecosystem, food chain as well as food hub. So what is an ecosystem? Living organisms seem to interact among themselves and with the physical environment. And there will be some interaction between the organism as well as the environment, and that is known as that complex system is known as an ecosystem. And there can be different types of ecosystem like forest ecosystem, as well as aquatic ecosystem, and as well as pond ecosystem. And the biggest ecosystem is known as a biosphere, and which is the earth. Only in the earth animals and plants are present. And the components of the ecosystem. What are the components? So there are two types. There is only the living components as well as the non-living. So living component, they are collectively called as a biotic, and non-living is they are called as a abiotic. So abiotic means the air, water, soil, they are coming under abiotic, and biotic all the plants as well as the animals. And again this biotic component, they are classified into three. They are producers, consumers as well as decomposers. So let's see what are producers. So organism which can produce or manufacture their own food, that they are called as a producer. So normally the examples are plants. So they are having the green pigments, that is known as a chlorophyll. With the help of the chlorophyll, they receive light energy from sun, and they produce its own food. And they are getting, for production of food, they are getting water and as well as nutrients from the soil. And this process is commonly called as a photosynthesis. And these green plants, they are collectively called as autotrophs. So auto means self and troph nourishing. As they manufacture their own food material, they are otherwise called as autotrophs. So I am giving some examples for producers. You can see here the plants, grasses as well as some algae. So they are able to synthesize own food with own food. And coming to autotrophs, so the synthesize its own organic molecule, that is nothing but a carbohydrate, a starch, and that is synthesized by the all plants, algae. And one exception in the animal, so they are called as a producer is euglena. So because euglena is having chlorophyll, and with the help of that it is synthesizes its own food. The only animal which synthesizes its own food is euglena. And there are heterotrophs. What are the heterotrophs? So the animals which depends on the autotrophs, they are called as a heterotrophs. So the heterotrophs coming under, they are collectively called as a consumers. So what are consumers? So they are the organism which cannot manufacture or synthesize its own food and nutrients, and they are getting the food as well as nutrients only from the producers. So they are directly from producers, so that is from the plants. So that's why they are called as a heterotrophs. Hetero means they are others, trophs nourish, they are nourishing, getting food from the others. I am giving some example here. You can see here in general consumer, rabbit, it is eating its food from the plant. Okay, and next is the decomposers. So components, so we have seen producers, and after that we saw consumers. Now the lastly decomposers. So what are decomposers? They are the organism which degrade or decompose dead or decaying organism. So they are also heterotrophs. And decomposers, they are called as their built-in recycling system. So they broken down the material from the dead plant as well as dead animals, and they convert into nutrients, and the nutrients are returning to the soil. They in turn create another food source for the producers within the ecosystem. You can see some of the example here: mushrooms, yeast, mold, fungi as well as bacteria. They are the common decomposers. You can see here mushroom as well as the bacteria in the picture. And coming to the chart, so we have seen producers, consumers and decomposers. Now we are going to classify the consumers. So consumers, they are getting the food from the producers. So they are again classified into four types. They are primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary and as well as omnivores. We will see one by one. And first, primary consumer. So the consumers, you can say here, organism that feed on producers. So we already seen in general consumers are known as the animal which are feeding on plants. Now primary consumers also the organism feed on producers, that is a green plant, they are called as, here it is called as a primary consumers. So there are another name given to the primary consumer, they are collectively called as herbivores because they are eating the plants. So examples of terrestrial herbivores are grasshopper, which feeds on grass, sheep, goats, cow, they feed on grass as well as other plants, and rabbit, deer as well as elephants. So they are the example for terrestrial herbivores. And there are herbivores which are living in the aquatic ecosystem, that is a pond, river, etc. So they are also the example for aquatic herbivores are zooplankton, krill, squid, small fish, and as well as the sea urchin. So now we see the diagrammatic example for primary consumers, and here you can see squirrel, rabbit, butterfly, grasshopper, rat, and zebra, seahorse, as well as a small fish. Now let's see what are secondary consumers. So secondary consumer, they are the animals that kill and eat the herbivores or plant eating material. They are called as a secondary consumers. So here the animals, they are killing another animal. So they are secondary consumer. So they are also called as carnivores. And example for carnivores, they are lion, tiger, fox, frog, snake, spider, as well as a crocodile. You can see here the spider eating an insect, and bear eating a fish, and a jackal eating a rabbit, and as well as a snake eating a rat. And now coming to tertiary consumer. So tertiary consumer, they are always called as top predators in a food chain. So they are the carnivores at the topmost level in a food chain that feed on other carnivores or secondary consumers. So tertiary consumers are the animals which feeds on secondary consumers. Example, an owl eats a snake, but an owl is eaten by a hawk. So therefore hawk is a tertiary consumer here. And tertiary consumer occupy the top trophic level, right? And they are predated by any other animal, not predated by any other animal. They are not killed by any other animal. So they are called as the apex predators. However, when they die, their bodies will be consumed by the scavenger besides the decomposers. And here the tertiary consumer example, you can see alligator and as well as hawk. Here you can see the tertiary consumer, the cat family, the leopard, and as well as cheetah, tiger, lion, and as well as the eagle, and you can see great white shark. They are coming as an example for tertiary consumer. And lastly, omnivores. So we are seeing consumers classification here. So we saw primary consumer and secondary consumer and tertiary consumer. Now we are seeing the omnivores. So some organism which are able to eat or which eat both plants as well as animals. So they are called as omnivores. So the animals which are eating another animal is called as another animal only is called as a carnivore. But here the animals eat both plants and as well as animal. So they are called as omnivores. By seeing the example, you may come to know about this definition easily. An example: cockroach, fox, seagull, and as well as human being. And here some of the omnivores, they are also called as scavengers. So scavengers are the animals which eat food that the other animals left behind. So for the scavenger example, we can see hyena and vulture. And in the picture you can see the example for scavengers, jackal and crow. You might have seen the crow eating both veg, that means seeds or fruits, and as well as dead animals like dead invertebrates like insects, etc. And turkey vulture. So vulture is an animal which eat only the dead bodies, and hyena as well as coyote. And we are going to summarize here the types of consumers. So herbivores, organism that eats another plant is called as herbivore, and carnivore, which the organism that only eats meat alone, and omnivore, an organism that eats meat and as well as a plant. And you can see the animals present in a forest, and we are going to classify these plants as well as animals by taking into the classification of biotic component. And first you can see the plant. So they are the producer, which makes its own food using water, minerals as well as sunlight, and the plant is eaten by the zebra, and zebra is a primary consumer, feeds on the plant, and the hyena, the secondary consumer, which eats the zebra, and lion, the tertiary consumer, which eats the hyena, and vulture, it is also coming under tertiary, but which eats the lion when it's dead, not in live. And all the plants as well as animals, so they are decomposed by the decomposers like bacteria, fungi as well as mold, which feeds on the remains of the plants as well as animal, and the remains, they are going into the soil and as a nutrient, and the cycle is continuing, right. And this is the flowchart for the entire thing we have seen here. And next we are going to see about food chain. So what are the food chain? So here you can see a food chain chart, and you can see from starting from producer, grass and as well as grasshopper, and bluebird, snake, owl and fungi. And what is the food chain? So food chain, so eaters are being eaten, they are called as a food chain. So one plant is there, and that is eaten by the herbivore, and herbivore is eaten by carnivore, and carnivore is eaten by top carnivore level, and finally decomposes. So this is a chain like structure, so that's why it is known as a food chain. The sequence of organism through which the energy flows. So here energy flows from the sun to the plant, plant to the grasshopper, grasshopper to the frog, and finally it ends with the eagle. And every plant and animal, so whether it is a big animal or a small animal, so they depend upon plant or animal for its survival. And for example, bees, so they are taking the pollen from a flower, photosynthesis of plants, and deer eating the shrub leaves, or lion eating the deer. So one animal, they whether it's a big or small, so they have to depend on another animal. And also here in the food chain, the energy stands up from one living organism to the another living organism. And it is also important for us to understand how the food chain is working. And by seeing that, we know that the importance of living organism, which is make up the food chain, and how the ecology is balanced. So here in food chain, photosynthesis, that is the beginning of the food chain. So there are many type of animals which eat the products of the photosynthesis process, like deer eating the shrub, rabbits eating carrots, and worms eating the grass. And when these animals eating the plant products, the food as well as the energy as well as organic compounds all are transferred from plants to the animals. And these plants, they are in turn eaten by another animal, again here transferring the energy from plant to herbivore, and herbivore to carnivore, and one animal to the another, energy is also transferred. And there are different types of food chain. So that the types is classified based on the animals living in a particular environment. First we are going to see about a grazing food chain, right. So grazing, what are the grazing food chain? So consumer utilize the plants as a food. Plants as a food, they are called as, they are constituting the grazing food chain. This food chain begins with the green plants, and the primary consumer is herbivore, and most of the ecosystem in nature, so that follows this type of food chain. So you can see here grass, and that is eaten by a grasshopper, and grasshopper is eaten by the birds, and finally the birds, small birds, they are eaten by the falcon. And here in this picture itself you can see the flower, caterpillar is a consumer, frog is another consumer which is eating on caterpillar, and here you can call this frog as a carnivore, and frog is eaten by the snake, and this is also a consumer, and finally the snake is eaten by the top predator, that is a owl. And this is an example for grazing food chain. And what are the other another food chain is detritus food chain. So here detritus means the animal which feeds on the dead plants and as well as dead animals, or you can say dead organic matter. So this type of food chain starts from the dead organic matter of decaying animals and plant bodies. So here decaying animals and plant bodies means death. After death, the animals as well as plants are decaying, and in the decaying animals and plants, this food chain is started, right? And they are decayed by the microorganism, and after that detritus feeding organism, and finally the predators, right. Here the food chain depends mainly on the influx of organic matter produced in another system. The organism of the food chain here includes algae, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, insects as well as the nematodes. And here you can see the detritus food chain, and dead organic matter that is decomposed by bacteria or millipede. So millipede are also called as detritivore, and with the help of the aerobic respiration, everything is the dead organic matter is converted into inorganic and enter into the soil as a nutrient. We have finished seeing the food chain. We have started with the definition of food chain and the types and what are the animals present in it. Now, why food chain is present in an environment? So, what is the need? So that we have to know, and as well as food chain is more important in any ecosystem, and what are the significance. So the knowledge of food chain, so the knowledge which is you are getting by seeing the food chain, it helps in understanding the feeding relationship between the animal as well as the interaction between one animal to the another animal and as well as the ecosystem. This is first point. And second one, it helps in understanding the mechanism of energy flow, that is from plants, sun to plant to another animal and top, and finally decomposes. So the mechanism of energy flow and as well as this circulation. So circulate from sun to the top carnivore and decomposes, again it is entered into the soil, and that understanding mechanism of energy flow is by seeing the food chain you can understand. And another understanding is the movement of the toxic substances from one organism to the another organism, and as well as the problem associated with the biological magnification. So biological magnification, that means when a toxic is entered into the plant from the plant, the herbivore, it takes the small percentage of toxic, and when the herbivore is eaten by carnivore, so such like that the toxic substance is moving, and when moved to the top carnivore, it is magnified like anything, and that will produce some death to the organism, and that we are saying it as a biological magnification. And finally, let's see what is food web. I think many of you know about the spider web. So that is a web, means it is just like interlinking of many things. And here, what do you mean by food web? So interlinking of many food chains, right? Here you can see the definition for food web. It's a network of food chains which are interconnected at various trophic level. After that, they form a number of feeding connections among different organisms of the biotic community present in an environment, and this is also known as consumer resource system. So what are the facts present here? Say a node, it represents the individual species or a group of related species or different stages of a single species, and the link, it connects two nodes. So it connects two nodes means two animals. The arrows here represent the link between the one animal to the another animal, which animal is eaten by the which animal, and always it also goes from the prey to the predator. And here the lowest trophic level called as a basal species, and highest is top predator. And here the movement of nutrient is cyclic, and whereas the energy is unidirectional and it is non-cyclic. When energy is entered into the system through sunlight, and it vanished or disappear at the last trophic level. And there are different food webs are available: soil food web, the organisms which are present in a soil, and aquatic food web in a forest, and food web in a grassland. We are going to see each and every food web here. And here you can see soil food web, and soil, when you take a single spoon of a soil, it contains millions of organisms. You can isolate many microorganisms as well as the minute microfauna and as well as mesofauna, right? And here from the plants, and plants, they are eaten by the nematodes, and the nematodes, and they are eaten by the arthropod, and arthropod are eaten by the nematode organism as well as the birds as well as the animals. And here you can see so many food chain possible here. One possible nematode, arthropods, and again another arthropod and birds, and again you can see from the soil, and soil fungi is taken up by the animal, and that animal is taken up by the birds. Okay, and here aquatic. In the aquatic food chain, you can see the sunlight is taken up by the phytoplankton, which are present on the surface of the water. Surface of the water, the plant which are microscopic plant which are present on the surface. They are called as a phytoplankton. We can't able to see through the naked eye. We can see only with the help of the microscope, right? And that phytoplanktons are having chlorophylls and they can synthesize its own food. And phytoplanktons, they are eaten up by the zooplankton, and zooplankton also the animals microscopic which are unable to see naked eye. They are present in the water, and they have taken up by the small fish and large fish as well as seal as well as beer. So this is interlinking of several food chain is present here, and they are aquatic food web. And food web in a forest, and forest green plant is the producer that is taken up by the mouse, eaten by mouse, rabbit as well as goat. So goat is eaten by jackal as well as the lion. Directly goat is eaten by jackal, and rabbit is eaten by wild cat as well as the lion, and mouse, owl and as well as snake, kite. So here you can see there are 4 food chains are available and they are getting interlinked. So this is a food web in a forest, and there is a you can see the grassland food web here, starting from the grass taken up by the grasshoppers, mouse, mouse is taken up by the snake and hawk, and grass is taken eaten by rabbit, hawk, grass, grasshopper, lizard, hawk, grass, grasshopper, hawk. So here also you can see 5 food chain is available and they are getting interlinked, and this is grassland food web. And so we have already seen the significance of food chain. Now why we have to study the food web? And here the food web, it distinguishes the level of producers as well as the consumers by identifying the importance of animal relationship as well as food source. That is beginning with the primary producer like plants, insects and herbivores, right? And second thing, and food webs, they are the important tools in understanding the plants are the foundation for all the ecosystem as well as all the food chain, which sustaining the life by providing nourishment as well as oxygen which is needed for the survival as well as the reproduction for entire animal kingdom. Not only entire animal, even for the human being also the plants are more important. And another important thing, this food is provide the stability in the ecosystem. So what do you mean by the stability in the ecosystem? When you look at the food chain or a food web, so I will give some example why it is giving the stability. Take a cropland ecosystem. In the cropland, crabs are the producers, and the crabs are eaten by the rats, and the rat are eaten by the snake. Snakes are eaten by hawk. Just imagine. So we are killing so many snakes in our environment. What happened to the rat? So the rat population getting increased. So there was a research saying that one pair of rat when you enter into the ecosystem, it produce one pair of rat when you enter the ecosystem, it produce 900 plus rats in a year. Just imagine, one pair produce 900 in a year, and what happened to the other rats? When snakes are not there, all the rat population will be flourishing. Our crabs will be, we lose so many crabs, and as well as from the rat also we are having some kind of disease, right? So snake must be there in a food chain. When snake is there, the rat population is controlled, and snake population also may not go bigger because hawk population is controlling. So this food web, it provides stability to the ecosystem. And coming to the conclusion, and we have seen ecosystem. What are the ecosystem? It's a interlinking of biotic component as well as abiotic component. There must be some interaction must be there, otherwise it is not an ecosystem. And what are the components present in an ecosystem? And finally we have seen food chain and food web. Thank you.